Hey everyone, welcome back to Embrace the Question. Steve here, and this week's video is going to be maybe a little bit different. I'm shifting my focus back to The Chosen. Dallas Jenkins and company have just spent the last week going through all of the episodes of The Chosen up to this date anyway, both seasons 1 and 2, up until today, which is Easter or Resurrection Day, or we are now in Passover week, indeed. So that was really a cool thing to be doing and kind of generating some new enthusiasm for the series. This week, I want to talk about 3 reasons why you should not watch The Chosen, but everyone else should. Now, before I start, if you're a fan of this channel or if you've followed me for long, then you know that I am a big fan of The Chosen. I think it is a great work. That said, I get a lot of comments from people that maybe should have avoided it, if you know what I mean. And those guys are on every channel. And I'm not saying that people that really have trouble with certain things should avoid them altogether. That's not always the answer. But in this case, maybe let's just talk about some reasons why they might want to avoid The Chosen. Or if you know somebody, let's just think it through before we recommend The Chosen to them. Again, if you're new to the channel, welcome. And if you have never seen our commentaries on The Chosen, you can check them out right here. The number one reason that you might want to avoid The Chosen if you have not seen it is that you cannot or will not read the scriptures for yourself. If you cannot or will not read the scriptures for yourself, that's a problem. And it probably applies to a genre of films, not just The Chosen. You should probably stay away from all Jesus films if you're not willing to actually glean the information for yourself from Scripture. Now, I understand that there are some issues with that. That cannot be a completely general statement. Some people can't read. Some people don't have access to Scripture, but hey, for whatever reason, they have access to The Chosen. Watch it. So far, it's not breaking away from the gospel message, and that's the breaker for me. But yeah, if you can't or won't read scripture for yourself, then you are already self-limited. And you should consider picking up the Gospels and actually reading the book of John, reading the book of Matthew, finding out what these true disciples really saw when they walked with Jesus. That is the whole key to deciphering truth whenever you're watching a series such as The Chosen or the Jesus film or the Gospel of John or any of these that have been out for a long while. Second reason why you might want to avoid The Chosen is that you cannot stand historical inaccuracies. Boy, those really come out in the comments. We get a lot of people that maybe they like The Chosen, but they really like to focus on the historical inaccuracies. I get that. And I like to point them out myself. Truly, I do. I think it's part of our job, especially as pastors, as teachers, to say, you know what, that's well done, but that probably didn't happen. You know what I mean? That adds value to everything. And I will be the first to point out that this is a series that doesn't have unlimited funding. They can't afford to do anything they want in order to make it completely historically accurate. They have done a fantastic job, but at the same time, they have missed it in a few places. I had one user say, you know, Gaius, when he's the centurion, he should be riding a horse. He never would have walked from point A to point B. He never would have walked when going up to arrest Jesus. And you know what? They're probably correct about that. He never would have. Centurions rode horses. They were officers. Officers didn't walk like enlisted men did. That's a good catch. And maybe had this fellow been there to advise, they would have remedied that one because, let's face it, there are horses on the set. But there are some other things that came out in the comments, and I don't have a list, and I'm not going to nitpick all the comments either. My own comments are sometimes critical about these inaccuracies, as I've already pointed out. But I've found that some people really can't stand the fact that not all the pieces fit together quite perfectly. And for those folks, I just would like to point out that this whole series is done in English. There were no English-speaking people in the time of Jesus in Galilee. So when we're looking at historical inaccuracies, what we're really talking about is how much I am willing to actually put up with, because we're all putting up with historical inaccuracies, whether we like it or not. It's in English. They have accents, but it's in English. So if that really bothers you, that is a good reason to not watch any Jesus films, because they are all going to fall into that category to some extent. For no other reason, it's 2,000 plus years now. We don't know everything about what life was like in that first century. We just don't. We have a good idea, but we don't have every piece. The third reason you might want to avoid The Chosen is if you're worried about the LDS Church and their influence on the show. Now, I know that there have been ties with the Chosen Project and the LDS Church, most of them focusing around their ability, the Chosen's ability to use the LDS Church's sets in Utah. And let me tell you, those sets are beautiful, amazing sets. I cannot imagine the money that it would have cost to reproduce those sets. I mean, you see the beauty and the majesty of these sets, and you're like, wow, this is definitely a high dollar production. And the truth is that it's really not. It would have been a much higher dollar production had they really had to create those sets, but they got permission to use those sets from the LDS Church. That really bothers some people. Some have some directing influence in the show. No story writing influence. As far as I know, it all comes directly from Scripture through Dallas Jenkins, who has very basically much, as far as I can tell, much the same background that I do. I believe he has a Baptist background, and I do too back in the day. Let me tell you, that is a denomination that cares very much about what Scripture says. They are very biblically focused. But again, this is Dallas's way of adding value to the intent of Scripture. It's a fictional show, and that in itself bothers some people. I've heard comments about, well, Paul wrote that anybody else who adopts a different gospel is accursed. Well, nobody has adopted a different gospel in The Chosen. There may be some facts of life that were embellished upon that we don't know about, that he took some liberties with, but that doesn't change the gospel. See, the gospel isn't the written page. The gospel is the message of Jesus. That's the gospel. And so far, that has not been tampered with. Jesus is the focus of The Chosen. And so far, they have not abandoned that. And that's why I'm really interested in continuing to watch with you guys and see where they take it. But all that said, this bothers some people. And I get that. I get that. There are people close to me that this bothers to the point where they won't watch it, and they probably should not. That's my take. They probably should not, because one, it's difficult to enjoy it, and when you're kind of hyper analyzing everything as you watch, it's very difficult to receive from it. You know what I mean? If you're automatically suspicious of something, it's very difficult to be blessed by it, if you know what I'm saying. So those are 3 reasons why you might want to avoid watching The Chosen, but everyone else shouldn't. if you don't have a problem getting into the Word, I know a lot of people that have been provoked by The Chosen, and because of it, they've gotten into the Word. They weren't getting into the Word. They were ignoring the Word. It was sitting on the coffee table. But because of The Chosen, they've begun to read. That should tell you right there something, because the enemy never wants to provoke you to be closer to Jesus. That's not his goal. It's not his focus. That's what I'm saying. Everyone else, if you don't mind getting into the Word, and really my third reason, you're afraid of being misled by the doctrine of an external group of people or an external church, another church's involvement. If you're afraid of being misled, that really ties into my first point, which is you just can't read it for yourself. I think The Chosen is going to be biblically accurate for the benefit of the gospel. I believe the gospel message will be intact and many will come to know Jesus because of The Chosen. And that is why I'm excited about it. The minute it takes that right turn or left turn and goes a different direction, then I will come on here and personally say, this is no longer what we should be watching. But I believe I can analyze the character of Dallas Jenkins well enough to realize he's not going to let that happen. Now, if something were to happen to Dallas and somebody else comes in and takes over for him and maybe decides to shift everything in a different direction, that would be different. That would be horrible. It's not impossible, is it? Then we would have to take another look and reassess. That's my take. Those are the reasons why you should avoid it. If certain things bother you, if you just can't take those little historic inaccuracies, watch something different, man. It'll be more beneficial to you if you just stay away from it, probably. Hey, thanks for hanging out with me for a few minutes. I've got other things in mind to do. Can't wait till they release season 3 so we can get into it and start releasing some videos, and hey, we'll start nitpicking and doing all the things we do. But until then, we have to kind of bide our time, I guess. All right. Love you guys. I'll see you soon. Be blessed.